Hi, my name is John. I'm doing this for my brother-in-law because, well, he thinks I'd be good at this, but we'll see. I'm just going to cook a little bit today. He thinks that I am a good cook, so I'm going to show you what I know. Today we're going to cook a little bit of a healthy lasagna. I am got a chronic heart disease, so as a result I have to kind of make everything on my own. Can't buy anything basically processed or pre-cooked or set up at all in any restaurant. So we're going to cook a little lasagna today, and I do make a good lasagna, so we're going to show you a little bit about it. So I'll just give you a little tour of the kitchen here. As usual, my kitchen doesn't really look any better than most people's kitchens. All kind of a dysfunctional mess. Oh, look at that. There's my deep fryer oil that's been changed out, waiting for a moment to be able to get it thrown out and got rid of. Old organic, and I don't know who can cook without having at least a bit of a sink of water for washing stuff up. I've collected up a few of the ingredients that we're going to use today. There's a shredder. I have, of course, pre-done up a lot of the stuff up to make sure that things are ready. Bit of a tip, I would say, that is number one when it comes to cooking. Get your stuff ready. Have it all ready. This is what I do. I know what I need, so I've got it all prepared and ready to go. Shredded up some cheese earlier. Actually, I've still got that in the fridge. I keep it cold because it's best to have your mozzarella or any cheese kept shredded at least to be really cold. Done up some mushrooms here. That's kind of a little extra for my lasagna today. I don't normally do mushrooms, but I had some old mushrooms that need a little using up. In there I've got, about maybe a cup or so of shredded carrot and some diced up peppers. Those are yellow peppers. You can use whatever yellow peppers or green peppers, red peppers, whatever you choose. And of course, almost important on any meat meal is to have some onion. There's at least a cup or maybe a little better. A tip about onions, I would say, if you cut an onion, you use the onion. If you don't use the onion, don't save the onion. Onions are notoriously terrible for collecting up all kinds of contaminants and stuff like that when they've been cut. Even you notice, of course, your onions that are in your pantry and stuff like that, they will typically start to grow a little green, and that's kind of like a moldy stuff. You don't want that. Definitely cut all of that away. If it's that bad and it's infected itself throughout, don't even use the onion. It's going to make you sick. All right? Reused onion will make you sick. I got garlic. Now I've got multiple garlic things to be able to press or the press. I don't really like to press the garlic. This is actually diced, kind of small diced. I got this one at Home Hardware. It's a great little unit. Shreds them up nice. You just cut the skins off, and then I usually slice it fairly thin. I don't know, about a quarter inch about a 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters thick, and then press it through. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to clean this one at times. Depends. Sometimes I need a toothpick to clean out all the grooves and stuff like that out, but it's actually not too bad. It's actually one of the better ones. I've got in my drawer here, actually, I've got another new kind. This is one that you press on a cutting board. That one works pretty good. I've got other ones that I've had, and they all work fairly good, but it's always good to have a good one that does. And in this case, I've got garlic. I've got about a quarter cup, half cup. Got my meat. This is using lean ground meat. You can use whatever kind of ground beef that you wish. The leaner, the better is, of course. And I've got my fry pan that's just starting to heat up here. Olive oil's on standby, need that. So just an idea of some of the stuff. Now back to some of the spices here. I've got parsley, oregano, and there's basil there, and then Italian with clove. That's just one of the ones I like to use a fair bit of. And I sneak in a little pepper, much to my wife's disgust. All right, so I'm figuring my pan is already pre-hot. I'm going to add myself about 2 or 3 tablespoons of oil, olive oil, extra virgin. We're going to put a little shake there. Put our garlic in there. onion in there. Cools it down a little bit. We're going to get our meat prepared, ready to go in. Alright, just a bit of a stir and make them a little bit translucent onion. And goes our meat. Now, big key you want to do with the hamburger. I want to make sure my hamburger is always chopped up fairly fine. Don't let it clump up. Big clumps is not good. I'll turn it down because it seems a little bit too hot. In this case, my meat was already thawed out. It was frozen prior to. There's a half a kilo of meat here. 1 pound, half a kilo, thereabouts. There's nothing specific about this. It can't be altered just a little bit. Close but no cigar. We'll let that cook up a little bit. We're going to add some of our spices to it now. Italiano. I can't really say how much to put in this. It's up to you. Some people like stuff to have a lot more spice. Some people like it just as it is. But this is probably about a good quarter cup of this Italiano, which is a mixture of actually all the other stuff we're going to be adding here too, along with oregano, and basil. This is probably just adding a lot more basil and oregano than what's in the Italiano. A little bit of pepper. That's a fair bit of pepper. And we'll let that kind of steam and cook up a bit more, making sure everything's all nicely fine, chopped up hamburger. All the spices starting to work themselves in. Cooking is creating. And there we go. It's pretty much done there. Close. Don't want it to be too much. I'm going to add the mushrooms here. And I'm going to put a lid on it. And turn it down a little bit. And then let the mushrooms steam in a little bit, because the mushrooms have a lot of moisture in them. I want them to get warm, and then I want it to kind of dry out a little bit afterward with the lid off after they're warm. A couple more in this here. We're going to let that cook a couple of minutes, probably about 5 minutes or so, to actually make them steam themselves out a bit. Alright, so I let it cook a couple of minutes, 3 or 4 minutes since now I've got them hot. All the mushrooms are hot, the meat is hot. And I'm kind of basically chopping up all my mushrooms to get finer. Mix them in. They were sliced, but now I've kind of basically turned them into ground mushroom. You see there's a fair bit of moisture in the meat mixture here. Now I wanted to mention one of the key things that I do when I do lasagna. It's all about, when it comes to the meat has to be at a fairly dry consistency compared to what you would make for a spaghetti sauce, for instance. You're making, in essence, like a spaghetti sauce, but you're trying to make a fairly thick spaghetti sauce. Now, I can't have spaghetti sauces that come from, say, pre-done up spaghetti sauce in a can or a jar. Can't do that because unfortunately the sodium levels are fairly high on those, and that makes it so the sodium level is not good for my diet, in my case with chronic heart issues. So therefore I have to keep my sodium levels in my diet down to a decent level, and in that case actually it's only 2,000 milligrams per day. And that can be basically, in about 1 cup of spaghetti sauce is almost an entire 2,000 milligrams sometimes. Alright, adding the carrot, peppers. We're going to cook these down a little bit. Same kind of like the mushrooms. The mushrooms are going to blend themselves into the meat. The peppers add really nice color to them, and the carrots are kind of cool because they kind of have a tendency to want to absorb the moisture. So I'm hoping that it absorbs, one, the moisture that comes out of the meat, the oil, as well as it absorbs the moistures that come out of the peppers and the mushrooms. Also, it's a sneaky way of mixing in vegetables into your meat mixtures so your kids don't necessarily even notice it. We're going to cover that again and give it a couple, 2-3 minutes. Okay, we're at simmered here 2-3 more minutes with the peppers and the carrot in there. Shredded carrot, 1 cup. Peppers, probably about 2 cups. Finely chopped peppers. And like I said, you can use green or red peppers, it doesn't matter really. It's all about your own personal choice. Now, I'm actually not sure, looking at what I've got here, I'm not sure if actually this is enough tomato. But we'll see. After it's been mixed up, I might actually add another half of one, or maybe I might add another entire full one, portion of, or whatever it is. Remember, the key, like I said, is to try to make a proper, kind of a pasty meat mixture for lasagna. You don't want it too thick and you don't want it too thin. When it gets too thin, then it does turn into a sloppy mess in your lasagna. If it's too thick, well then obviously it's not going to make it a very good meat mixture as well. So it's a mixture, it's up to your personal choice, and I'm thinking right away from the looks of it, I might be actually looking for another one. This is just tomato sauce, but added with all the spices that we had before, the basil and the oregano, the Italian mixture, is going to make it into almost like a marinara. Oh, there we go. It's cooled itself down. I turned it up a little higher before to get this at medium to a boiling, simmering. That's actually just about right. The only thing I'm thinking from the looks of it, I might actually add a little bit more of the oregano. Actually, I never put parsley in it, so we're going to add a little parsley to it. Makes it a little more greenish. The funny thing is that happens with parsley and the other ones here, and the oregano, it tends to want to absorb and make it into a little bit of a thicker. So a little bit of sprinkled parsley here. Mix that in, see what it looks like, what it smells like. Turning it down, it's up to a boil now. And we just want it to simmer at this point. We don't want it to burn to the pan or get too hot, start splattering and making a mess all over the place. Actually, one thing I add occasionally to the meat mixture, and it sneaks in some of that vegetables on the kids, is I add broccoli. If you take the broccoli flowerets and you chop it up fairly fine and mix it in here, they don't even notice that there's broccoli there. Then again, I don't know, some people's kids, they can pick it up. All right, looking pretty good there. Let it simmer a couple minutes. Okay, we're gonna make our noodles. Noodles don't really make much difference, but I'm telling you, my opinion. Oh well, I've got whole grain here because that's better and healthier for me. Costs about $2.50 or $3 or something like that for this box of lasagna. This is what, $3.75. That's usually typically what I need. I got my water going here. I got a little bit of oil in there. Make the water is just about ready to come to boil. Remember, back at our meat sauce, simmering away a little bit. Peppers still kind of showing a little bit, but a lot of the moisture is coming out of it. So we're going to cook up our lasagna noodles. This can get kind of... Alright, managed to get all that entire package into here. It's always a little messy actually because it wants to bubble up and boil out, so I try to keep it down a couple of inches from the top there. Turn it down a little bit in this case so that it boils regularly but not viciously boiling, as a word I would use. I'm going to let it sit there and cook 8 minutes. We're about 4 or 5 minutes into the noodles here, and I decided to turn off my meat sauce here, let it just cool off a little. It's easier to put it and prep the lasagna together when it's a little on the cooler side. I don't want it cold, but definitely don't want it to be simmering, boiling hot. And if you notice, right there in the sauce, there's a little bit of fluid in there, but very minimal. This has been sitting simmering, non-stirred, so everything that's fluid has come to the top. There's not much fluid in it, and that's the way we would like it. All right, we're about time on our cooking pasta here. It's about 7 or 8, 9 minutes or so. We're checking to see if the pasta's okay. I've checked and seen. Everything seems good. So we're gonna drain our pasta. And if I could give you anything for a tip and advice, your camera, would be you want to drain it. Go with cold water immediately. I'm going to cool it off with cold water immediately. Let it soak a bit. Then I'm going to dump and drain it again. And go with cold water again. What we need to do is chill that pasta immediately. Letting it soak a bit. I'm going to stir it because the noodles are really, really hot still. It's got it down to basically a lukewarm temperature in my water now. See, a few of them got busted up fairly good here. I think we may not use those healthy lasagna noodles again. They didn't seem to really hold up very well compared to the white. Drain it again. cold water back in. Sometimes this takes 2 or 3 times. All right, we're just going to let that sit in cool water for now. I'll probably actually doing it again in about 5 or 10 minutes or so and do another set of cold in there. Meat sauce is sitting there cooling now. Let it sit and rest a bit. It's looking pretty good. The proper consistency, I think. That should work out. And our next step will be to prep through and combine basically all of our stuff for the lasagna, which will include, I have real ricotta cheese here, which is one that you can use, that or else possibly a cottage cheese, preferably using cottage cheese if you get either 1% that's drained or maybe even a dry cottage cheese if you want to use cottage cheese. But I kind of prefer this ricotta, which is kind of like a fine unprocessed cheese. We have an egg that we're going to mix with that. And then this is where I have all my mozzarella cheese. There's about 4 cups or so of that mozzarella cheese. I'm not really sure if that's enough, but at least it's a start. If I do need some more, I do have a little bit more mozzarella cheese that mixes in with it. So we're going to mix in our ricotta cheese and an egg and a little bit of the mozzarella. What we do is, this is 1 pound of ricotta. All right. And then 1 egg. There's a reason for the egg. The egg starts to, of course, when it cooks, makes it a little firmer. And there's about 1 cup of cheese in there. Mix it all up. As you can see, a little bit in there, just all mixed up. Kind of comes out, I don't know, ricotta is almost like whipping cream consistency. I think maybe I'll add a little bit more cheese, 1/4 cup. Ricotta's a little on the expensive side. That costs about $5 for that tub. On that note, lasagna is not really anything cheap when you do it right. You know, $6, $7 for meat, a whole bunch of other stuff added to it there for vegetables. $3, $4 for a lasagna noodles. And in the end, it actually costs you about probably 20 bucks for that pan. Okay, assembly of the lasagna. I always find it best to start with a little bit of meat sauce on the bottom, and very thinly put the meat sauce. And this just actually, most of the, isn't so much that you need it. You need something down here to kind of prevent the noodles from sticking to the bottom of the pan. Don't suggest an oil, but just a little something like this. Messy sometimes anyway, lasagna. So as a result of that, you don't necessarily lose this. It gets mixed in the wash or whatever it is. So we've got lasagna noodle. And I'm starting out with some full ones. And this is a pan that fits just perfectly for the length of these noodles. I'm going to put 2 in on both sides. And then this one here is perfect because it just kind of just slightly overlaps to make 3. Okay. Now we're going to put some more meat sauce, but this time a heftier amount. One of the key things I find about making lasagna, though, is that You don't have to put excessive amounts of it. A little bit. I'm pressing it in. It's actually only about maybe 1/4 inch thick or less. Because the really key to making it is this next step, which is cheese. I actually ground up or shredded up a little bit more cheese than I had before. So what I used in the ricotta, I replaced. So spreading it thinly, just nice and thin like this. All right? You can still see through to the meat. But the real key about this is that you want your mozzarella cheese, or whatever cheese you use. Sometimes I've used a cheddar mozzarella mix, right? Is that you want it just to be thin enough, to melt enough, to be able to hold that all together. All right? More noodle. One side. The other side. Now it's getting a little wider. This pan actually has a tendency to bow out, so I'm actually going to probably use 4 this time to make sure that it's fully covered. Okay? Now we're going to put a layer of ricotta cheese. Once again, spreading it nice and thin. Then, guess again, a little more mozzarella, spreading it all about nice and thin, still see the ricotta through it. All right. And back to another layer. Now, we're in the middle here, and I've got a couple of busted up noodles that don't really look so good. It's not going to matter too much, so I'm going to put those busted up ones right in the middle. They didn't survive very good, the cooking. Flip that one over. Meat sauce, next again. Don't press into it too hard. You don't want to mess up the layers you got prior to. And you get it. Basically, we're just repeating the same process for multiple layers. I'll restart once we get to the very top and finale row. Okay, so we're on our last layer now. And this is where, basically it's a bit of a choice as to how you want to do things. I prefer not to have noodle on the top. I kind of prefer to actually have meat sauce at the top because the meat sauce doesn't dry out when it's cooking in the oven. Whereas the noodles have a tendency to possibly dry out. So I want a little bit of meat sauce, a very little fine amount of meat sauce on the top here, and then the cheese to finale it on top, and everything's done. If you haven't noticed, of course, I've only got 3 left noodles, so therefore that's what's going to have to do, is the 3 noodles at the end. It also kind of, the 3 noodles being in a row like this also makes it a lot easier when it comes to serving it up. And you know how you like to be able to get that first piece of the pie there without it all messing up. this is the best way to do it, because you're cutting through where the noodles are, and then you're cutting the other way so that you're being able to take a small piece out. I usually use a small flipper like this to be able to lift it out, like a pie flipper or something. So you can lift out that first one, and after that they should, like I said, the consistency of this meat sauce, and as well as with the cheese in between and that sort of thing, it should actually keep itself within the layer that it's supposed to be in, or that you like to see in a traditional picture. All right, meat sauce. I'm kind of questioning whether I got enough cheese here, but we're going to have to deal with what we got. And just because I've got extra meat sauce doesn't mean I should use all the meat sauce. Very big error that people do sometimes when they're cooking. They decide, well, I made it, I'm going to use it. Well, that's not always necessarily the best way to do it. Looks like I'm going to be pretty close to bang on the consistent that I need here. So, spread that all on. I'm not eating this right away. It's sort of warm. I'm going to leave it out. I'll maybe put it in the fridge. Depends. To cook it up in the oven afterward. 375. About 40 minutes or so. There we go. I've got just a little bit left. Maybe I'll use it. This to the edge, stop it from sticking. Yeah, let's just use it up. We got enough. It's only a mouthful or two. Perfect. I might even actually shred up some other cheese that I got. I got some, oh, maybe not. If you have more cheese on there, it makes more of a cheesy crust, if that's what you like. I don't really care too much, doesn't matter. So, last and final step, 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes or so in the oven, 375. Let it rest about 10 minutes after it comes out of the oven. That resting time makes it so much easier to get actually out of the pan. And that's about it. All right, it's time, I guess. We've got our lasagna ready to go. I did add a little bit of marble cheese shredded on the top. Just didn't quite seem to think there was enough cheese, so what the heck, let's add a little more cheese to it. I've preheated the oven to 375 degrees, and it's time to put her in just in time for when the wife does come home. Shh, be quiet about the prepper. All right, I'll keep that to you and me and nobody else until she sees this video. All right, I'm going to put her in the oven. All right, real important, in the oven, I got it in the middle rack, 375, and we're going to go for about 45-50 minutes. We'll see how it's looking at after about 40. We got some other things to prepare for the dinner, and I guess that's about it for this video. We'll have a little final conclusion, a look-see, reveal. All right, lasagna is done. Timer's not quite saying it's done, but I did 40 minutes or so I pulled it out actually earlier before this to make sure, but everything seems to be in good order. Wow, it's looking really good. Well, looking nice and cheesy on top. And a little crispy with the meat on top. Kind of a cool thing. The bubble in this down in the bottom. You can see on my clear pan bubbling through. Now we're going to let it sit and rest for 10 minutes. Meantime, I've got other things to put in. I'm doing some garlic toast with it. I've got a salad made. Everything's all finished. Alright, I guess we're done. We're going to see how it turned out. It's been resting for about 8 or 10 minutes. Remember, our lasagna noodles were this way. Cut through the cheese very good. But really nice and crispy meat. Ooh, don't let that one get away. See how it comes out. Cut the sides. There we go. Wow. First one comes out a little messy sometimes. That's not too bad. Thanks, Steve, for getting me up to this.